Hey guys, so incredibly excited to be sharing this plant with you guys today. This desirable tropical plant is pretty rare, but it's increasing in popularity and availability as well. I actually picked up this Rhaphidophora Decursiva from my local nursery. And if you saw my latest live event, then you know that I picked up this plant along with 7 or 8 others. But this has to be one of my new favorite plant babies that I'm most excited about. So much to share with you guys about this incredible plant. So stay tuned for crucial care tips as well as how to get your Decursiva to climb and attain those beautiful split leaves, that mature foliage that we all want, and so much more. So before jumping into crucial care tips with you guys, you're not gonna believe what happened to me the other day. I was sitting eating my breakfast a few mornings ago and heard this huge crash, this thud in my house. I obviously jumped up out of fright, and I usually do scare quite easily, but I just wasn't sure what this huge crash noise was coming from my living room area. Long story short, my low light corner, now I did a video on this a while back. This whole corner, it had some shelves and a planter, and the shelves completely came off the wall, crashed down into the planter, causing a lot of noise and a huge mess. As you can see, the 2 marble shelves literally came right out of the wall, and unfortunately they fell on my really nice square planter and creating a whole bunch of destruction. Luckily my plants are for the most part okay, although the snake plant got the worst of it. Anyways, you can see here after I cleaned everything up that it wasn't too bad, although there is a huge chunk missing out of the floor. And ultimately in the end, I'm really glad that I had this planter to kind of break the fall of these shelves. Otherwise, I think could have been a lot worse. So despite following the installation instructions on my CB2 marble shelves, I guess they were just too heavy for the wall. I'm not quite sure. Either way, I'm sharing this with you guys because I think this corner will be the perfect spot for my Rhaphi. Also, since installing a 4-foot by 4-foot skylight, this corner isn't exactly low light anymore. Unfortunately, I didn't get a video of my scream, jump, and scare when the whole thing went down. But let's jump into crucial care tips and helpful hints for this beautiful tropical plant. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm Tyler, and if you like what you're seeing or you find this video to be useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, or better yet, you can subscribe to my channel. This plant is native to Southeast Asia. It is a giant climber, and you can get these really long aerial roots on this plant. Now, these plants aren't too prone to pests, which is great, although a little periodical maintenance in wiping down the leaves with some wet paper towel will probably do this plant some good. Like I said, I did pick this up from a larger local nursery. This was on their rare plant table, and I did pay a little bit more for this plant than I would for your typical sort of average houseplant at this nursery. But definitely worth it. These plants are very desirable because of how they grow and how the foliage changes. As the plant grows and matures under the right conditions, of course, the leaves will start to split or create windows, and this is kind of like a monstera. As you can see here on a juvenile plant, the leaves are oval shaped with this sort of greeny bluish color, whereas mature leaves can be as big as 40 inches long and 20 inches wide, with a ton of splits or windows on the leaves. That's more than 3 feet. So beyond your typical crucial care tips, there are some things you can do to ensure that your plant is maturing and gets those beautiful mature leaves. I'm going to explain some really important tips to get your plant to maturity, but let's cover the basics first. Now, in terms of lighting, I'm going to be keeping mine in that corner where I showed you guys, and this is inset quite a bit from a south-facing window with access to all of the bright indirect light from the skylight. These plants do appreciate and like humidity, so if you can give your Rhaphi 60% humidity or even a little bit more, a little bit higher, then they will really appreciate it. Now, in terms of watering these plants, you're going to want to water them about once a week in the growing season and a little bit less in the winter months. Now, obviously this is a function of the amount of light and the other conditions that the plant's receiving, but as sort of a general sort of tip, I would say about once a week. Otherwise, make sure that the topsoil is completely dry to the touch before watering them. You can fertilize your Decursiva with slow release pearls, but make sure that you're doing this only in the spring and summer months and not during the non-growing season. If you're interested in more content like this, please give this video a thumbs up or leave a comment down below. A really important step you can take to help your Rhaphi thrive is using the right or appropriate soil mix. I'm using a combination of fine bark, perlite, peat moss, and coco coir. Now, this combination is meant to do a few things. The bark and perlite will help with drainage and aeration, whereas the peat moss helps with the pH levels. All in all, this is sort of described as a rich, light, and well-draining mix. Now, I've seen and heard some folks use a small portion of sphagnum moss or vermiculite included in their soil mix, and I think this is something that I'm going to consider once I repot this plant. Now, if you're interested in some propagation tips, I'm going to be sharing that at the end of this video. But first, let me delve into some of these important tips to get that mature foliage and those split leaves. The first thing you need to do is include some sort of moss pole or climbing structure. Right now, I only have mine staked with a bamboo stake, but if you saw my latest live event and plant haul, then you know why. So this plant will be getting a better climbing setup, like a more intense and larger moss pole or some sort of trellis. The other thing to consider is using a container or a pot that's nice and deep, and when I repot mine to include this better climbing structure, I'm going to use a pot that's not much wider, but that is nice and deep so that the roots have some depth and space to grow. Now, you definitely want to increase your pot size slowly as time elapses and as your plant grows. However, pro tip, just be fully aware that if you allow this plant to get too root bound, which means that you aren't repotting it often enough in that 1 to 2 year mark, then the leaves can revert back to their juvenile state. To ensure maturity, you really need to take into consideration the sort of general care tips as well as those other things that we just spoke about. To really show me some love, hit the bell for alerts and notifications for future content. Now, here is a cutting I took from my Monstera, and you can propagate your Decursiva in the same way basically. So what you're going to want to do is take a cutting from the plant, and you're going to want to make sure that you have at least 2 aerial roots. Here I had 3 aerial roots already on this cutting, and basically all you need to do is place the cutting in a vessel or container of water and make sure that the plant is getting a lot of bright indirect light. So it's going to take several weeks to a month for the roots to grow in. You want them to grow in about 4 or 5 inches, and it's going to be at that point that you're going to be able to repot this in the appropriate soil mix and a container. Just make sure that you're switching out the water every couple of days with new fresh water. That's really important, and make sure that it really is getting that bright and direct light. Well, that's it for me. Oh yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button. Missed you guys already. Until the next one.